Adapted from archaic translation by W.H.D. Rhys. JATAKA number 176. Kalayamutha Jataka. A foolish monkey, etc. This story the master told at Jetavana monastery, about a king of Kosala. One rainy season, disaffection broke out on his borders. The troops stationed there, after 2 or 3 battles in which they failed to conquer their adversaries, sent a message to the king. Spite of the season, spite of the rains, he took the field, and encamped before Jetavana monastery park. Then he began to think. It is a bad season for an expedition. Every crevice and hollow is full of water. The road is heavy. I'll go visit the master. He will be sure to ask where you go. Then I'll tell him. It is not only in things of the future life that our master protects me, but he protects in the things which we now see. So if my going is not to prosper, he will say it is a bad time to go, sire. But if I am to prosper, he will say nothing. So into the park he came, and after greeting the master sat down on one side. From where come you, O king? Asked the master, at this unseasonable hour. Sir, he replied, I am on my way to subdue a border rising. And I come first to ask your farewell. To this the master said, so it happened before, that mighty monarchs, before setting out for war, have listened to the word of the wise, and turned back from an unseasonable expedition. Then, at the king's request, he told an old story. Once upon a time, when Brahmadatta was reigning in Benares, he had a counselor who was his right-hand man and gave him advice in things spiritual and worldly. There was a rising on the frontier, and the troops there stationed sent the king a letter. The king started, rainy season though it was, and formed a camp in his park. The Bodhisattva stood before the king. At that moment the people had steamed some peas for the horses, and poured them out into a trough. One of the monkeys that lived in the park jumped down from a tree, filled his mouth and hands with the peas, then up again, and sitting down in the tree he began to eat. As he ate, one pea fell from his hand upon the ground. Down dropped at once all the peas from his hands and mouth, and down from the tree he caused, to hunt for the lost pea. But that pea he could not find. So he climbed up his tree again, and sat still, very glum, looking like someone who had lost 1,000 in some lawsuit. The king observed how the monkey had done, and pointed it out to the Bodhisattva. Friend, what do you think of that? He asked. To which the Bodhisattva made answer. King, this is what fools of little wit are accustomed to do. They spend £1 to win a penny. And he went on to repeat the first stanza. A foolish monkey, living in the trees. O king, when both his hands were full of peas, has thrown them all away to look for one. There is no wisdom, sire, in such as these. Then the Bodhisattva approached the king, and addressing him again, repeated the second stanza. Such are we, O mighty monarch, such all those that greedy be. Losing much to gain a little, like the monkey and the pea. On hearing this address the king turned and went straight back to Benares. And the outlaws, hearing that the king had set on from his capital to make mincemeat of his enemies, hurried away from the borders. At the time when this story was told, the outlaws ran away in just the same fashion. The king, after listening to the master's utterances, rose and took his leave, and went back to Sravasti city. The master, after this discourse was at an end, identified the birth. In those days Ananda was the king, and the wise counselor was I myself. Source. Adapted from archaic translation by W.H.D. Rhys. JATAKA number 177. Khuddhaka Jataka. All around us see them stand, etc. This is a story told by the master while at Jetavana monastery, about perfect knowledge. As in the Mahabodhi birth, and the Ummagga birth, on hearing his own knowledge praised, he remarked, not this once only is the Buddha wise, but wise he was before and fertile in all resource. and told the following old story. Once upon a time, when Brahmadatta was king in Benares, the Bodhisattva was born as a monkey, and with a troop of 80,000 monkeys he lived in Himalaya. Not far off was a village, sometimes inhabited and sometimes empty. And in the midst of this village was a tinduka tree, with sweet fruit, covered with twigs and branches. When the place was empty, all the monkeys used to go there and eat the fruit. Once, in the fruit time, the village was full of people, a bamboo palisade set about it, and the gates guarded. And this tree stood with all its branches bending beneath the weight of the fruit. The monkeys began to wonder. There's such and such a village, where we used to get fruit to eat. I wonder, has that tree fruit upon it or no? Are the people there or no? At last they sent a scout monkey to spy. He found that there was fruit on the tree, and the village was crammed with people. When the monkeys heard that there was fruit on the tree, they determined to get that sweet fruit to eat. And growing bold, a crowd of them went and told their chief. The chief asked, was the village full or empty? Full, they said. Then you must not go, said he, because men are very deceitful. But, sire, we'll go at midnight, when everybody is fast asleep, and then eat. So this great company obtained leave of great their chief, and came down from the mountains, and waited on a hard by until the people retired to rest. In the middle watch, when people were asleep, they climbed the tree and began eating of the fruit. A man had to get up in the night for some necessary purpose. He went out into the village, and there he saw the monkeys. At once he gave the alarm. Out the people came, armed with bow and arrow case, or holding any sort of weapon that came to hand, sticks or lumps of earth, and surrounded the tree. When dawn comes, thought they, we have them. The 80,000 monkeys saw these people, and were scared to death. Thought they, no help have we but our chief only. So to him they came, and recited the first stanza. All around us see them stand, warriors armed with bow and arrow case. All around us, sword in hand. Who is there who can deliver? At this the monkey chief answered. Fear not. Human beings have plenty to do. It is the middle watch now. There they stand, thinking we'll kill them. But we will find some other business to hinder this business of theirs. And to console the monkeys he repeated the second stanza. Men have many things to do. Something will disperse the meeting. See what still remains for you. Eat, while fruit is left for eating. The great being comforted the monkey troop. If they had not had this crumb of comfort they would have broken their hearts and perished. When the great being had consoled the monkeys, he cried, assemble all the monkeys together. But in assembling them, there was one they could not find, his nephew, a monkey named Seneca. So they told him that Seneca was not among the troop. If Seneca is not here, said he, have no fear. He will find a way to help you. Now at the time when the troop swiftly moved on, Seneca had been asleep. Later he awoke, and could not see anybody about. So he followed their tracks, and within a short time he saw all the people moving fast. Some danger for our troop, thought he. Just then he saw, in a hut on the outskirts of the village, an old woman, fast asleep, before a lighted fire. And making as though he were a village child going out to the fields, Seneca seized a firebrand, and standing well to windward, set light to the village. Then did every man leave the monkeys, and hurried up to quench the fire. So the monkeys ran away, and each brought one fruit for Seneca. When this discourse came to an end, the master identified the birth. Mahanama Shakya was the nephew Seneca of those days. Buddha's followers were the monkey troop. And I myself was their chief. Source. Adapted from archaic translation by W.H.D. Rhys. JATAKA number 178. Kakapa JATAKA. Here was I born, etc. This story the master told in Jetavana monastery, how a man got rid of malaria. It is said that malarial fever once broke out in a family of Shrivasthi city. The parents said to their son, "Don't stay in this house, son. Make a hole in the wall and escape somewhere, and save your life. Then come back again. In this place a great wealth is buried. Dig it up, and restore the family fortunes, and a happy life to you." The young fellow did as he was asked. He broke through the wall, and made his escape. When his complaint was cured, he returned and dug the treasure up, with which he set up his household. One day, laden with oil and ghee, clothes and dresses, and other offerings, he went to Jetavana monastery, and greeted the master, and took his seat. The master entered into talk with him. "We hear," said he, "that you had cholera in your house. How did you escape it?" He told the master all about it. Said he, "In days of past, as now, friend layman, when danger arose, there were people who were too fond of home to leave it, and they perished by that. While those who were not too fond of it, but departed elsewhere, saved themselves alive." And then at his request the master told an old world story. Once upon a time, when Brahmadatta was reigning in Benares, the Bodhisattva was born in a village as a potter's son. He worked on the potter's trade, and had a wife and family to support. At that time there lay a great natural lake close by the great river of Benares. When there was much water, river and lake were one. But when the water was low, they were apart. Now fish and tortoises know by instinct when the year will be rainy and when there will be a drought. So at the time of our story the fish and tortoises which lived in that lake knew there would be a drought. And when the two were one water, they swam out of the lake into the river. But there was one tortoise that would not go into the river, because, said he, "Here I was born, and here I have grown up, and here is my parents' home. Leave it I cannot." Then in the hot season the water all dried up. He dug a hole and buried himself, just in the place where the Bodhisattva was used to come for clay. There the Bodhisattva came to get some clay. With a big spade he dug down, till he cracked the tortoise shell, turning him out on the ground as though he were a large piece of clay. In his agony the creature thought, "Here I am, dying, all because I was too fond of my home to leave it." And in the words of these verses following he made his moan. "Here was I born, and here I lived. My refuge was the clay. And now the clay has played me false in a most grievous way. You I call, O Bhagava. Hear what I have to say. Go where you can find happiness, wherever the place may be. Forest or village, there the wise both home and birthplace see. Go where there's life. Nor stay at home for death to master you." So he went on and on, talking to the Bodhisattva, till he died. The Bodhisattva picked him up, and collecting all the villagers addressed them thus. "Look at this tortoise. When the other fish and tortoises went into the great river, he was too fond of home to go with them, and buried himself in the place where I get my clay. Then as I was digging for clay, I broke his shell with my big spade, and turned him out on the ground in the belief that he was a large lump of clay. Then he called to mind what he had done, mourned his fate in 2 verses of poetry, and expired. So you see he came to his end because he was too fond of his home. Take care not to be like this tortoise. Don't say to yourselves, 'I have sight, I have hearing, I have smell, I have taste, I have touch, I have a son, I have a daughter, I have numbers of men and maids for my service, I have precious gold.' Do not stick to these things with craving and desire. Each being passes through 3 stages of existence." Thus did he advise the crowd with all a Buddha's skill. The discourse was bruited abroad all over India, and for full 7,000 years it was remembered. All the crowd dwelling by his advice, and gave alms and did good until at last they went to the heaven. When the master had made an end, he explained the truths, and identified the birth. At the conclusion of the truths the young man was established in the fruit of the first path saying, "Ananda was then the tortoise, and the potter was I yourself."